Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this webinar. The webinar is entitled How Business Leaders Can Step Up EBITDA and What I Have Learned from FSO's 1,000+ successful projects. Let me explain more. My name is Hugh Williams. I have the pleasure of being your host for this webinar this afternoon. Just to make sure everybody's on the same page, EBITDA, earnings before interest, tax, depreciation and amortization. So just to make sure we're not starting off with an acronym we don't know. Really talking about how businesses can improve their business earnings out of this and how you go forward. Now, rather than give you a theoretical set of ideas, much better we thought to actually learn from somebody who's spent a lot of time doing this with businesses over the last 30 years. So much better to talk to a successful practitioner about their experience than give you some theory. And that's what we hope to be doing today. So I'm very pleased today that we have the opportunity of having a fireside chat with Luca Stupino, who fits that bill enormously in terms of experience and success of doing this kind of thing. Before we begin, let me just share with you, if I may, just how we'll run the webinar. As most of you have done, your microphones are already muted. That's great for doing that. It cuts down any background noise. But please feel free, turn your cameras off. It's lovely to see you there, and it's lovely to see that you're joining us. But just for bandwidth and quality reasons, feel free to just turn your cameras off for that. We do invite you to send through any questions as we go through. Please use the chat box for that. Any questions, any comments, any observations, we'll be keeping an eye on that as we go through. And we will be running a little session at the end where we'll have an opportunity, or you'll have an opportunity to put one or two questions directly to Luca. We're going to be recording the webinar, so please feel free to stick something on the chat that says, yes, could we have a copy of that, please, as we go through it. So feel free just to ask for that, and our colleagues will make sure that you get it. So if you're sitting comfortably, as they used to say many years ago, check your internet strength, make sure your volume's right, and let's get started, shall we? So as I said, my name is Hugh Williams. Just a very brief number of words to tell you who I am. I've been working in value chain since way before it was called value chain. In fact, even before the term supply chain came out, which tells you how long ago it was. My particular role has been focused on specialist education, training and workshops. When we go into something like supply chain, we have to learn how to do something different. If we don't change the way people think and work, we're not going to get anywhere near the success that we wanted. And I think we've all seen evidence of that. But I've done this now for many years over some large companies, as you can see on the list here, and in many different countries. And I can tell you this, wherever you happen to be in the world, the language may be different, the culture may be different, but the problem remains the same. And I'm rather hoping that as we talk to Luca, we can unfold some ideas as to how we can tackle some of these challenges that we go through with this. So I mentioned Luca. Here's the man on the screen. Luca, perhaps I can ask you to introduce yourself.
With pleasure. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, Hugh. Thank you for facilitating this workshop. I've been in the business for more than 30 years, and it was really an exciting journey because I started with the famous TPM, just-in-time only manufacturing, and over the years, I had the pleasure of expanding our make it happener kind of philosophy to the full value chain. And what is important for this webinar, and I'm very keen to share with you, is that I wouldn't speak about losers or winners, if you like, but certainly we saw some paradigms and some ingredients that the people really creating a fast value creation always apply in their journeys, let's say. So this workshop is about, good examples, bad examples, but, all capitalizing our experience in going fast in creating value in the different companies, and also not in a particular sector, because we have some, experiences in many sectors, and also not in a particular domain of the value chain, because we are really talking about end-to-end connected to the board ambition of companies, let's say. That is one of the most important ingredients. But I don't want to steal my own thunder, Hugh. Back over to
Yeah.
you.
Don't skip ahead. I haven't done the introduction
Exactly.
yet.
I am impatient.
Well, the idea of this webinar, Luca, really came to us, didn't it? Because we'd been talking about the kind of challenges that many of our clients have, that they're still facing today, arguably in a more difficult environment than we've seen in the past. And one of the things that you said to me was, that actually when you see the same things happening in many different companies, and actually if the same things are happening, then surely there must be a way of approaching this, if you like, with I won't say standard set, but some guidelines, if you like, that seem to be applicable no matter what industry, no matter what the issues are. These can be followed wherever. So you said to me, there are a number of these that really are principles, if you like, to follow. So perhaps you just introduce us, if you like, to where you'd start with this. What's the most important thing you think at the beginning of all this that companies really need to do to chase this?
Well, the first and foremost ingredient is the connection to the board.
Yeah.
So there is almost like a 1-to-1 correlation, not even 1 to 0.9 correlation between success, going fast, doing something really relevant for the company, and the boardroom ambition. So I've seen over the years many programs successful, but pretty functional and not even, I wouldn't say literally known by the boardroom, but almost like peripheral to the boardroom, that were locally successful. We improved a number of KPIs very proudly, but they didn't make the difference to the value of the company, to the, incarnated by the EBITDA. So lately, obviously, that was not very clear 35 years ago when I started, but lately, the connection to the boardroom, we are not there to change the boardroom ambition, although we can be sometimes challenged, let's say, but certainly the connection to the boardroom. And let me give you an example. We have been engaging with a big company, the food and beverage sector in the UK predominantly, even if we have some sites outside the UK. And this company, we connected to the CEO of the company, the first meetings, and it was clear this company has got a tremendous ambition to go from 3 billion turnover to 7 billion in 5 years, with an EBITDA going from single digits to maybe, in the middle of the second decade, let's say 15%. And everything we did is now connected beautifully or nicely to this ambition, let's say. So that is the first ingredient. So what we see at the top of this page is started from the boardroom ambition.
And I ask you then, you gave an example there of quite a long horizon, sort of a 5-year horizon that companies are looking at, a really major strategy for the business. Are you saying then that it has to be connected to that kind of vision, or can it be shorter term than that? We know there's a lot of CEOs are in for something less than 5 years sometimes.
Absolutely.
With ambitions to follow. So what's your view on this? Directly connected regardless of the time?
It is very nice to have a flag in the kind of medium term. So it is nice to have a flag of it's almost like if you're owned by a PE, if you like, it is the horizon of a PE, if you like, as a flag. But certainly it is very far away to say we have a vision 2027, for example. So it is very important, and we can call it point 1A on the slide.
Yeah.
To break the vision into absolutely smaller chunks. And the smaller chunks can be, maybe year or even what we call them progression cycles over 1 year. So we need to deliver something every 3 months, very tangible and very impactful on EBITDA. So absolutely break the vision. Point 1A is to break the vision into small chunks which are edible, quickly.
And are you anticipating with this? I know in all the time that I've been working with this, one of the big things that challenges companies when they're talking about operational improvement, I mean that in the widest sense, operational improvement, is gaining the drive from the most senior leadership. We can talk, we'll be working for the supply chain director, we might be working for the COO, but have we really got the drive from the top? So when you say boardroom ambition, are you talking about members of the board, or are you talking about the CEO, CFO?
Well, we're talking about C-level in general, and certainly normally what we do is we have a very frequent interaction with the CEO on a monthly basis.
Yeah.
And maybe we drive together with the CEO, the CFO on a weekly basis to make sure that the value is created, let's say. So we have different frequencies for different board members, let's say, but you know, the C-level has to be involved at the latest, let's say, on a monthly basis.
Wow, that's quite different and quite demanding. I mean, you're saying that the leading companies, the winning ones, as you referred to beforehand, this is just normal practice for them.
Absolutely. And when we speak about the monthly connection, it doesn't mean the full day, you know.
Yeah,
maybe we escalate to the CEO, if you like, what we call the green, amber, and red. So green is good news, we're delivering value. Amber is little problems we are able to sort without necessarily your intervention. And maybe red is escalation point that the CEO has to remove quickly to continue with the journey, let's say.
Yeah. Now, the second point you make on here, it just talks about looking across the whole end-to-end value chain. Aren't companies saying, well, we do that anyway?
No, maybe you can maybe animate exactly. Maybe you go to the next click. Yeah, exactly. This is to have a pictorial view of what we mean. The point is that the vision, the value creation ambition is obviously important but very broad. And what we normally do when it is a workshop where we involve the board and also the functional leaders, let's say the supply chain director and so on and so forth, it is important we can't do everything at the same time, let's say. So yes, we preach about doing something concurrently, but we are also pragmatic and we say the result of this workshop is let's understand the top 3 priorities. Let me say 3, let me say 2, let me say 4 along the value chain. So it is very traditional to go straight into manufacturing because in manufacturing, we started the operational excellence program so many years ago, to be honest, when I started 35 years ago. However, we may have other domains, as we call them, of the value chain, especially in some sectors. For example, we mentioned food and beverage, let me mention pharma. In pharma, it is very important to have a very effective and efficient what we call idea to value process. So you know the new product introduction value to create value to get into the market before the competition, let's say. And this is I don't want to have but sometimes much more important in manufacturing, let's say. So with no offenses, obviously we love manufacturing. So it is important we take this step 2 to transform the ambition and the boardroom strategy, if you like, into what are the weakest links, if you like, or the most important links along the value chain to really add value and to remove the blockers at the time they have to be removed. Otherwise, we have a false sense of achievement, but not impacting on the EBITDA. And that is a fundamental step to really create value.
Now, just picking up 1 or 2 comments on the chat that I thought I'd just feed back to you here. The first one about the boardroom ambition, maybe a little tongue-in-cheek, says, doesn't that assume the ambition is based on some sensible logic? Yeah, I think if we don't think that's the case, then that's maybe the part where, as Luca said, there are opportunities to help the board look again at their strategy, if you like. But I think an important point made in the second one, which was about rephrasing that instead of boardroom ambition, actually bringing the board to the shop floor. There is a gap, isn't there? There is very often a gap between what the boardroom is thinking about versus what's actually happening on the shop floor. And actually bringing those 2 together is a major challenge for many companies, isn't it?
Yes, indeed.
Okay, so if we just then think about perhaps slightly more traditional areas that people tend to look at. They tend to think about, don't they, reducing cost. And you said, yeah, well, there's nothing wrong with that. And that's one of the things that you would do. But perhaps you can just expand for us on what you mean by that.
Over the years, and it is a very nice pattern we noticed, there is almost a maturity level in manufacturing achieved over the last 30 years again, which is the culture of we call it the U-shape approach. So we identify a cost, you break the cost into the famous losses. In manufacturing, losses are non-value adding activities. Then you have a plan to improve the losses, and then you go back up to, I reduce the cost because I reduce the non-value adding. In our experience, as soon as we go outside manufacturing, we tend to go for the traditional approach, which is cutting costs without understanding the losses. And again, we speak about companies going faster. The companies who take the time to apply the same cost, losses before, losses after, and cost after, if you like, approach, this U-shape approach outside manufacturing, are going faster. Why? Because with the traditional methodology, let me state the obvious, we are maybe cutting value-adding costs, let's say, and then you pay a fine, if you like, at the end of the process, because obviously maybe you cut people and too quickly, and those functions are absolutely fundamental to create value in the end, let's say. So this loss-based approach has to be maintained across the value chain when we, get into those weakest link of the end-to-end. So maybe this company, it was again, we go back to the food and beverage, let's say, had this ambition of applying this loss technique to the full cost, the little drawing at the bottom left is indicating the end-to-end analysis. Yeah. We did a thorough investigation of the P&L, and you can see at that time this company was turning over 1.1 billion. The ambition was the arrow was we couldn't quantify that at that time, so we maintained the original analysis, not retrospective. The ambition was to grow more than 1.1 billion, but another indication is that we didn't even know the quantity of the growth ambition. And as you can see, the first element was to split the cost into macro functional cost, let's say, so the raw materials, the conversion cost, the distribution, the sales and marketing, the business processes, and obviously we have a nice EBITDA remaining, which was not too bad, 11%, so not negligible. But then what we did, as you see on the screen, thank you, Hugh, for animating this slide, is a rigorous cost, which is the blue bar, losses, which is the red bar, and savings opportunity, value-adding opportunities, which is the green bar, identical approach across the value chain. It was a phenomenal kind of result, because when you wrap everything up, you obtain a phenomenal step change in the EBITDA, and you have a single agenda philosophy across the value chain this is one of the best examples, obviously, 11 to 23 is phenomenal, but even if it was 11 to 15 or 11 to 18 would be exactly the same, creates the sense of coherence between different approach in different domains of the value chain, sense of a single agenda, and so on and so forth, let's say.
It sounds dead logical. You take a very successful approach, you apply it to value change, but it doesn't happen that quickly, does it? I mean, we traditionally have had all of our operational excellence and people who are geared up to all this in manufacturing, and now all of a sudden we're saying, well, hang on a minute, let's take it all the way out from supplier to customer. Is that a challenge, that we don't have people who know this, who can take it out to value chain, or do you think companies have overcome that quickly?
Oh, that's a good question, and to be honest, the answer is related to the culture of the company. The latest trends are, to be honest, we have talents to develop quickly in all the domains of the value chain. So capitalizing on the experience we have in particular domains of the value chain, the expansion should happen quickly. And these 11 to 23% analysis, yes, you said, Hugh, looks quite huge. But then we go again to the weakest link, let's say. So we have a, what we call a progression plan to make sure that in the next, maybe that is the ambition over the next 3 years, let's say. But we split the division into much smaller steps to achieve the vision progressively. So we're not kind of overly excessively resource hungry. So we make it absolutely feasible to reach the 23% eventually of this slide.
Now you talked to me about the fourth point that you have, which was really to identify those work streams that directly impact EBITDA.
Exactly that.
So is this what you're saying? Is really focusing on all of these plethora of opportunities here, to see which ones will build this. So one of the questions being asked in the chat is, how do you determine the size of the losses? Now, I know this is perhaps going back to the whole philosophy of how you go about doing this, but do you have a 2 or 3 sentence framework in mind that you could share with people about how you might decide whether this is a sizable opportunity in terms of the losses or whether it's relatively small?
No, we like in our company we preach it will be a very important point later, but let me steal my own thunder as always. We like we give a very big priority to the engagement of people and the leadership of people. So rather than going to the maximum level of potential of the losses, the amount of losses and the loss reductions, we prefer to have a coherent and co-designed plan to identify and reduce losses, let's say. So my philosophy is don't go to the second decimal place of the loss amount and the loss reduction potential. Have an engagement, cross-functional team along the end-to-end. And maybe this slide is not, we could have reached 25% EBITDA, but to be honest, I don't overly mind as long as we have the buying, and the enthusiasm and engagement, if you like, in the leadership more than anything, of the different actors, if you like, along the, in addition to the C-level people, but the different actors along the end-to-end value chain, let's say. So instead of a magic formula, the magic formula is engage people, I would say.
Okay, that's an interesting mantra to take with you. Now, I can see just from the little diagram that you've got here of the end-to-end, which is fairly simple compared to the vast majority of companies' end-to-end supply chain. They're already going to be doing a lot of initiatives for improvement. Okay, we're going to talk about how they need to look at this, and they're going to have a whole lot more initiatives. I'm sure, like me, you've seen many projects that say, yeah, we would do that now, but we're so busy with all the other things that we're doing. What would your advice to our guests be about that? Because what we're seeing a lot of the time, certainly what I've seen, is that things basically get a bit constipated because there's so many things that companies need to do. How do you go about making sure that the things that you do actually line up together and are driving towards EBITDA? Because there could be a lot of them.
Very good point, Hugh. In 100% of the cases, not even 99.9, when we come, we are invited nicely by the C-level to the company. We visit different functions, different sites, different entities along the value chain. We notice a plethora of initiatives, let's say, even with different names. And we invented a new terminology called the projectitis. Projectitis is like a managerial illness that is basically so many initiatives concurrent and almost stealing resources of each other and demolishing the sense of single vision, coherence, and so on and so forth, let's say. So you remember 2 minutes ago I said engagement of people, but equally important and even instrumental to achieve this engagement is to create a sense of single agenda, let's say. So very soon in the process, we say we are a consultancy company, we have people, but forget about we are a consultancy company. It is not a project belonging to the consultancy company, project belonging. So we create a single agenda. Incidentally, we can support some of the project, but it is very important to create a single agenda. We have a tool called the progression plan, but I would be a bit shy to speak about specific tools today. Imagine a single roadmap, with all the initiatives captured, let's say, as opposed to single names, single initiatives, to have a sense of coherence, consistency, and every single person, if you like, every single functional leader, let's say, feels his part to play or her part to play, if you like, in this single plan to achieve the ambition. That is. So single agenda, in addition to engaging, is our recipe.
What do you think makes that something different from the way companies approach it today? Because we see a lot of companies that have set up what they call a PMO, a project management office. I know that some of them are project management for a specific project. Do you see companies actually setting up a a corporate project management office that is looking at the, if you like, their version of a single agenda approach, or do they not really do that then?
We see some examples of corporate PMO, let's say, if we want to use the terminology, which is a very good step forward towards the single agenda. But this is, to be honest, not so common. So we're encouraging people to, to push even further, let's say. And what we see in companies is that formally there is a corporate PMO function, but in practice, if you are in a particular kind of, place of the value chain, you're literally bombarded by different initiatives anyway. And I'm very concerned about the short flow of people, because maybe if you walk along a corridor of a distribution center, for example, very often you see different names of different programs concurrently running, even if you have a corporate PMO function, let's say. So we need to make sure that there is a coherence, a consistency between this corporate PMO function and the fact that we have a single agenda called in the same way, let me say. So we don't confuse people and we engage people instead.
Could you perhaps give us any tips from your experience of how, even with the single agenda, you might overcome some of the challenges? One or two people in the chat are mentioning these, where some of the functions, there's almost a natural tension between them. So we're not all rowing in the same direction necessarily, exactly right. So there is conflict in cost base, whether it's marketing costs versus operational costs, admin, sales costs, all of these things coming together. Does that mean that the single agenda, or the owners of the agenda of that, are in a position to make those decisions about those conflicts?
Well, let me give you a couple of examples, because the couple of examples is SNOP or IBP process.
Yeah.
And recently I came across a company very big on SKU optimization, let's say. It is clear that it is impossible to not have conflicts, because obviously, different functions got different targets. But what we do is to have a series of workshops to basically, we try to understand, first of all, the why, the storytelling.
Yeah.
Why do we, for example, with this company, we went from, we have a need for SKU rationalization. And in order to engage as many functions as possible around this SKU, because obviously the sales people are not happy to drop some SKUs that generate sales, the manufacturing people are very happy, so that is the typical. But we understood together with this company, we didn't really have a growth strategy, for example. So sometimes it is important to go from the symptom, if you like, to the, I wouldn't say the illness necessarily, but, so the symptom of we feel uncomfortable to reduce the SKUs, if you like, to optimize the SKUs, was in reality a symptom of a bigger need, I wouldn't say illness necessarily, which is lack of growth strategy. So when we see conflicts, which are the natural conflicts, if you move them up again towards the board ambition, and we share with everybody the why, the storytelling, if you like, of this why, let's say, normally the conflicts are less severe.
I suppose that leads us in a way naturally on to your next point, which you raised right at the beginning when you started to steal your own thunder, and you talked about a little bit about leadership, adoption and behaviors. This is part of the engagement that you're talking about, yeah?
Yes. We have, and it is nice that as soon as we share this acronym, people in 1 hour start to speak this acronym on themselves, for themselves, sorry. And the acronym is PhD, which is not the academic title necessarily. We don't want to, actually, we are the opposite. We are trying to make things very, very simple. And PhD for us is a process, human dynamics, and digital. Digital will be the next page. Human dynamics is at the center of this mantra. If we don't achieve human dynamics, my nice, hopefully, provocation is don't waste your time. So for us, human dynamics is working on the leadership. And the leadership is, you see this little icon with the triangle and the arrows in blue, that is creating the so-called guiding coalition, making sure the guiding coalition is from, maybe resisting even, to accepting, supporting, and driving. And so we bring the guiding coalition to drive the process, to convince people, to to give the vision to people and to convince more and more, the classic snowball effect. Then if you click on the next element, I spoke about adoption before.
Yeah.
Adoption of the SKU rationalization, the S&OP. Very often, adoption is absolutely lacking when we speak about cross-functional projects. So I don't really understand the why, and I naturally resist. My pet step in the adoption process is step 6. So I have 2 pet steps. Step 1, I don't understand the why. How many times? Very often I do that myself. For lack of time, we tend not to explain people why. We explain directly the what. Let's say.
I totally agree with you.
The other step, which I don't want to be, my preferred step is step 6. If I had to embrace a change, and guess what? Feelings are right by definition. I lose more than I win. Guess what happens? I will resist. So go back to the R, if you like, in the RASD, we call it model of leadership. So there is a connection between leadership and adoption. Unless I can feel I win more than I lose, let's say. So, for example, I need to, the example before, I drop some of the SKUs. I'm a sales and marketing function, or sales in particular. I drop some of the SKUs, but now the storyline says now we have a coherent growth strategy. So I feel happy. I feel, okay, I need to lose some of the SKUs. But the big win is, finally the company has got a growth strategy, let's say. And then the last but not least element is we translate the leadership and the adoption into what we call behaviors. The behaviors are basically in some what we call high impact moments. The high impact moments can be even a board meeting every month, let's say. The leaders, especially the leaders, have to exhibit some leadership behaviors that have the power to convince everybody to follow the single agenda, coherent plan we put together, let's say. So the high impact moments can be a daily meeting around the machine, even a hourly meeting around the machine, as well as all the way to the boardroom. So we need to define within a particular function, if we start from a function, but also eventually along the end-to-end value chain, high impact moments where our leadership, our adoption can be visibly displayed to the people who are, maybe followers. So, they are not part of the guiding coalition yet, but will become the part of the guiding coalition eventually.
Can I just take you back to something you said just a few minutes ago in respect of all of this? Because one of the things you said, a kind of provocative statement, you said, if you haven't got the human dynamics element built into what it is you're going to do, don't waste your money. Okay, don't bother, don't waste your money. And that's pretty strong thing. But when you look at this and you talk about leadership, we know that it changes a little bit, but we know the vast majority of our senior leaders, the CEOs, CFOs, they traditionally come through the accounting route. So there'll be finance people. They may come through the sales and marketing end. Rarely are they people who come through operations, and particularly not supply chain out of this. But you're coming to people like this and saying, actually, you at the top of the tree need to understand this human element, and you need to drive this to make it happen. Am I hearing you correctly? That's what you're saying.
Yes, and excellent provocation, Hugh. What we normally do is almost like have a two-way street. For example, I spoke about this big company in the UK. Let me go back to this almost like closing loop, let's say. We will have across the all the elements of the journey we are co-designing and we are pursuing. The site leaders present to the board their ambitions. In this way, yes, maybe the board is not doesn't have an operational background, let's say, but seeing the site leaders so engaged and speaking about the KPIs, speaking about their ambitions, speaking about the savings plan, speaking about the value creation plans, if you like, can absolutely bridge the gap between the board and the operation, let's say. So it is not necessarily, a one-way street. It is basically making sure there is a bridge between the two, and you create a sense of it is contagious. This enthusiasm by the side leaders is so contagious that maybe the C-level very often say, I tell you what, Richard, I'm going to visit your site in a couple of weeks. I'm not far away. Let me spend a couple of hours to visit your site and to, congratulate with the operators that achieved this magnificent value-adding for like project, for example.
Yeah.
So you create, the not necessarily one way, but two-way street for like to make sure that the different backgrounds understand each other.
Let's just move finally then to a topic that's on everybody's lips these days: digital. Yeah, there's very few companies haven't got some kind of a digital agenda, even if it's perhaps focused on point solutions. We're all doing it all of the time, but now it's become very much bigger than that. Your final point, I know, revolves around how you manage the whole digital approach, isn't it?
Well, again, that is digital appeared in 8 years ago, 10 years ago, and obviously we followed the enthusiasm, and we follow the river, let's say. But over the years, we heard many companies saying, I have now embraced a digital journey. I am digital. And then I don't know if we can spend a couple of minutes to provoke the audience with hopefully a nice digital paradox, we call it. When I started working, unfortunately, or luckily actually, so many years ago, in order to become technological, I had to go to the workplace. So, because I didn't have a computer at home, you remember the big computers we had at home, and eventually.
Yeah.
Today, it is exactly the opposite if you think about it. So when you go back home, you hardly use paper. You don't have your flight tickets to go to your next holiday on paper. It is all digital. You even command your heating system by digital. But 1 hour before you get home, you activate, or even with your car and so on and so forth. So what is the digital paradox is that you are more digital at home than you are in the workplace nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
So what is our credo is to start from the brilliant basics of digital instead of jumping to what we call shiny toys. Yeah. So companies believe they are digital because they embraced the artificial intelligence, digital twins, and so on and so forth. Absolutely fantastic things to do. But I wouldn't say instead of, but in parallel, make sure, please, that your people, again, I don't want to, be tired of saying end-to-end, let's say, are not subject to digital paradox. So if you go to a site, distribution center, manufacturing, whatever, if you go to a particular process, order to cash, you see people really doing what they do at home. They don't have paper. They don't receive an order by fax, for example. We had recently in many companies, they are, the classic, when we go to business processes, the classic one to start from is the cross-functional order to cash process. Yeah. Very often you go to those departments, you go to Gemba, and you see the opposite of the digital, let's say. Yeah. So you are positively horrified, meaning, what a set of fantastic opportunities. And the first step is to make sure that why don't we do in the order to cash process what we would do at home, let's say. So no paper, everything is, flowing nicely, let's say. Everything is done on tablets, and it is even, a step in the direction of engaging people because people get excited as opposed to collecting order by fax, let's say, which, to be honest, it is not a joke. It is the case. So we invented over the years the so-called 4P approach on digital. You can see on this page. So absolutely people first. I don't want to judge the digitalness of a company because you do artificial intelligence involving 10 people. If you have 10,000 people in your organization, how many of them have been touched by digital? That's why we say people first. The second P is don't do digital in isolation. So if you have a single agenda, you remember we spoke 20 minutes ago about the single agenda, make sure the digital support the single agenda as opposed to having yet another, if you like, both stream, if you like, separate from the main program. This is the partnership with existing programs. progressive journey. So you can see an example from one of our clients of the so-called digital pyramid, and the brilliant basics and the elimination of the digital paradox happens at the bottom of the pyramid at the beginning. And then, of course, when we are at the base of the pyramid, then we can escalate up to, autonomous planning and digital twins and, so the sophisticated tools. And I don't mind, who am I to judge, but, maybe we can have two parallel things, but my recommendation is to have the base of the pyramid and the elimination of digital paradox first, maybe combined with some sophisticated. And guess what? If you do the 3 Ps properly, you become profitable because there is a clear connection between digital. And you remember the famous acceleration of the journey towards the so-called EBITDA of 23% in our example. It is clear digital is so value adding because speeds up the journey as opposed to being a shiny toy. So the 4th P, which is profitable, is a consequence of the first 3 Ps, if you like, set up properly.
Okay. Interesting view of how this happens. So let me just go. We're just going to look at how you wrap this up. We talked about the winners and what they're doing. So just run through for us the 7 points as you see them now. You started off with the boardroom.
Yes. So try to collate, the story we shared in the last half an hour with those 7 ingredients. So starting for the boardroom, have an end-to-end analysis to understand the weakest link first. Have a cost loss, the Hugh-shape approach, cost, losses, and cost again, if you like, across the value chain as opposed to only manufacturing. Understand clearly and give priority to those streams really impacting the EBITDA and value creation to give confidence in a way to everybody in the organization, starting from the C-level, but also, the shop floor people can see the value creation nicely created. Avoid the projectitis, so have a absolutely be ruthless on a single agenda concept as opposed to, maybe namely a corporate PMO, but different initiatives going on at the same time, let's say. Don't forget and actually start from the human dynamics, as we call them, so leadership and option and behaviors. And last but not least, don't forget to eliminate the digital paradox first and work around the 4 Ps when you implement your digital to really create value of digital and value creation of digital.
And I think if I was to play one thing back to you, what I've taken out of this is your mantra about engagement all the way.
Yes, absolutely.
Luca, thank you very much indeed. It's been a really interesting journey to hear your thoughts on all of these and learn about some of the examples that companies are doing. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.